Weather can have a big impact on your hair. And if you have curly hair, you might feel that the struggle is insurmountable sometimes. And while there are lots of resources out there to help you handle your hair and your hair look better in humidity, what about dry weather? Dry weather can have a big impact on your hair too, but there's not that many resources talking about it. So I decided to really focus on this myself and crack the code. It will help me because I live in a dry environment. In fact, I have for most of my life, but I also hope it will help you if you are struggling with frizzy, dried out hair, uncontrollable hair that's not soft and manageable, that just looks fuzzy in dry weather. Like I said, I've lived in a dry climate most of my life. I grew up in Idaho and Montana, which are dry a lot of the year, and now we're back in Idaho again. I've also lived in Oregon and California, which are at least very dry in the summer. So most of my life in dry climates, and I've recently paid quite a bit of attention to the problems that I get from a dry climate, and I'm trying to solve them once and for all. I'm not trying to be fatalistic here. I know we all can look at ourselves and think, oh, my problems are worse than anybody else's. But I do think I have some problems, which maybe you can relate to. So I've got the dry climate problem. My hair is fine, easily weighed down, yet it's high porosity, so it dries out easily. And to top that off, my curls are not very strong. They're a blend of 2C waves to 3C curls, and they just really don't want to stay. They easily get stretched out and lose definition. So I'm coming to you with someone who feels like I've got quite a few problems, and if I can overcome them and share with you how I did it, I hope that will give you help, that we all can find that sweet spot of balance where our hair can look really good in spite of the downsides. Regarding the dry climate, I'm not complaining about living in a dry climate. I don't want to live elsewhere. There are really great benefits to living in a dry climate. You don't have the mold issues, you don't have those annoying bug issues, and you don't have the humidity either. So my goal is really to get the best of both worlds, the benefits of dry climate, but overcome the downsides on my skin and hair so my skin and hair will still be soft, supple, manageable, look good, and feel good. But being real, when you live in a dry climate, the struggles of it sometimes can seem insurmountable. But take heart, they're not. Before I explain the problems, and I have a ton of solutions for you, let's define some terms really quickly so we can be on the same page. When I use a certain word, what do I mean? Where are we going with it? So the first most important thing to talk about is dry. What do I mean when I'm talking about dry hair, dry air? Okay, so there are two ways that I use the words dry or dryness in this video and the accompanying article. The first is just referring to the amount of water in the air, in your hair, or even if we're talking about skin, in your skin. So how much water is in there? Meaning your hair is wet out of the shower, or it's dried, meaning you've air dried or diffused it. Wet versus dry. Or the air has less water in it, meaning the opposite of humid. The second common usage of dry is often said when we're really struggling with our hair, like if it's frizzy or out of control or feels brittle, feels rough. We say, oh, my hair is so dry. Well, that will be a less common usage in this video, in this article. I'm going to focus primarily on the first definition, which is the amount of water that's in your hair or in the air. Also keep in mind that when we say our skin is dry, we say our hair is dry, there's actually some water in there. There's a level of essential hydration that's in your hair or in your skin where you feel like, oh yeah, I'm dry, but it's really not dry. And we want to preserve that ideal amount of hydration, which I will talk about coming up. Because that healthy amount of hydration is what makes us feel like our hair is healthy, soft, and supple, or our skin soft and supple. Next, let's discuss the dry climate. We all know that there's various levels of water in the air. In humid climates, there's a lot of water evaporated and in the air. In dry climates, there's very little water in the air. And in moderate climates, somewhat in between, which you might consider a more comfortable climate to live in. People talk about this in terms of humidity or lack of humidity, but actually the most accurate representation of how much water is in the air is called the dew point. There is a very scientific definition of the dew point, which I will read. The dew point is the temperature to which the air must be cooled to become saturated with water vapor, given a particular air pressure and water content. And it goes on, and it concludes with the more moisture the air contains, the higher its dew point. So then you could say the less moisture it contains, the lower the dew point. Now, you really don't have to memorize that or keep that too close to your heart. If you're sciencey, you probably already know what it is without even me saying it. What you really want to know, practically speaking, is how to define the ranges of what would be considered a high dew point or high humidity, a moderate dew point or moderate humidity or normal conditions, and low dew point, which would be considered dry climate. There are various sources on the internet that give you ranges, and I will give you one of them that I feel to be pretty accurate to my experience. But regardless of the numbers, you want to go by what your hair is telling you in certain conditions so that you can find a sweet spot for you, or ranges for you that would be considered dry and more challenging. I track the dew point through the AccuWeather app. I go to the current day, I scroll down to today's details, and I click see more because dew point is hidden in the more technical details. And then you scroll down again, and today's dew point says 43 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, according to the source that I follow, dry conditions is a dew point below 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So 43 degrees would be considered dry. Comfortable or moderate is the dew point of 50 degrees to 59 degrees Fahrenheit. And humid is the dew point above 60 degrees Fahrenheit. So use those numbers to kind of correlate how your hair is doing or is likely to do in the future when you run into dew points where your hair does better or does worse. Keep in mind, you can live in a dry climate both in the cold winter and in the hot summer. Idaho and Montana, at least in the areas I've lived, tend to have a lot of dry conditions both in the winter and in the summer. Whereas when we lived in Oregon or California, the winter would be humid, but the summer was the dry season. Okay, we also need to talk about the role of moisturizers. So moisturizing, we see this on products, we talk about it, oh, my hair needs moisturizing. Well, did you know that there's actually two categories of moisturizing, and they are very, very different. Both are very important because they help keep your hair healthy, soft, supple. Basically, when we could say our hair looks good and feels good, it's not too heavy, it's not too dried out. It's right in the middle there where we would say, oh, my hair is moisturized. Well, let's talk about the two categories of moisturizers that contribute to that. First is hydration, and hydration has to do with water, and specifically how full or empty your hair is with water. And there is a sweet spot where healthy hair is hydrated perfectly. It hasn't gone too low, and it's not too heavy where it would be called wet. There are special ingredients that are often used, widely used in skin and hair care products that help your hair or your skin hang onto or even draw water to them, and these would be called humectants. The most widely used is glycerin, and there are others like aloe, hyaluronic acid, flaxseed, and there's many, many more. But they really have this property of helping your hair hang on to hydration or even drawing water. And remember, healthy hair that's considered dry, meaning not wet, does have some water in it, otherwise it wouldn't look and feel so healthy. On the opposite side of the spectrum from water, you have fat-based ingredients that contribute to moisturizing your hair and giving you that proper moisture balance. We call these moisturizers, conditioners, but they are the specific ones that are fat-based. They are called emollients, and you find them as either oils or butters, and they are in many, if not all, of your hair care products. They're in shampoos, conditioners, leave-ins, styling products, whether they're on the lighter end of the scale, which would be the oils, to the heavier end of the scale, like the butters. If you put humectants and emollients together in the right balance for your hair type and your issues, you have healthy, moisturized hair. Which seems kind of contradictory because normally oil and water don't mix. But in the chemistry of hair, your hair wants a little of both of these in the proper balance for you to have soft and healthy hair. And most people have that blend that works well for them that's in their shampoos, conditioners, leave-ins, styling products, etc. If you've ever used a product that you've said, oh, my hair is so heavy, well, you probably over-moisturized in the emollient category. If you've used products and you say, oh, my hair feels so dry and brittle like straw, you probably didn't get enough of the right emollients for you. You might not have incorporated enough water, hydration, when you were using your styling products. And one more thing about emollients in particular, which we'll discuss a little bit more later on, is they can be used to seal the hair shaft, meaning add a barrier between everything that's in or on the hair shaft and the air to kind of seal and hold it in, like lock it in. And that's very helpful to stave off any transfer of ingredients evaporating or water leaving the hair and entering the air, or in a humid environment going from the air into the hair. And this is what happens in humid environments. Water in the air enters the hair, making it swell and causing it to be mushy and really frizzed out and big. In a dry environment, because water wants to balance, the water in your hair will go into the air, and that leaves you feeling extra dry and frizzy. And in moderate environments, there's less of a transfer because there's not such a big difference in the amount of water in the hair, and the air is similar, so you tend to have really good hair days and not so much trouble. So in humid or dry climates, using both the right humectants and emollients in our hair care products can really help us to protect against that transfer of moisture between the air and the hair, or the hair and the air. Okay, so are we clear on terms? We've talked about dry or dryness, we've talked about specifically a dry climate, and we've talked about the two categories of moisturizers, hydrating humectants, and then emollients that seal and moisturize or condition. You might already sense where we're going with this. Let's go a little bit deeper into the problems that a dry climate can create or exacerbate with our hair. If you live in a dry climate and you've been struggling with why your hair looks and feels so bad, worse than everybody else's, or why the products that everybody else uses don't work for you, or why you fix your hair and it looks great in the morning, but then within minutes, it's like looking bad and frizzy. How does that happen? Well, you very well could be struggling with dry climate problems. And I do have fixes coming for you, but first let's talk about the dry climate problems in depth. Problem number one, you guessed it, dryness and frizz. Because water wants to balance, when the air is more dry, the water from the hair will go into the air. And that leaves you more dried out, meaning less hydrated, less water in your hair than there should be for it being healthy, feeling good, and looking good. And it leaves you frizzy. And actually, the cuticles on the hair shaft, because the hair shaft, if you looked at it under a microscope, kind of looks like a pine cone. And those cuticles flare up and they're like fingers in the air. And they're saying, give me water, I need more water. But the water is going out. Those cuticles being open is the frizz halo. It's the fuzz that we accumulate as our hair gets more and more dry, meaning more and more less wet, past the point of hair being healthy. You don't want that water to leave your hair, yet it often does in a dry climate, and that's what leaves you feeling extra dry and frizzy. Problem number two is lack of curl definition. When your hair gets frizzy and loses that essential hydration, the curls lose definition and your hair just gets puffy. It looks like one mass instead of defined individual curls that we all want. In addition, and as a side note, if your hair is suffering for lack of protein and you need more, then your curls and your waves won't be as strong as they possibly could be. We'll talk about that more. Problem number three is lack of shine. When hair is moisturized, and we're talking about the hydration through water, the humectants that help hold on to or draw water, and the emollients that moisturize or condition, your hair is shiny and healthy. And when water goes from your hair to the air, even the emollients can evaporate and you lose some throughout the day or days, then your hair just gets less and less shiny and looks less and less healthy. Now, this is completely normal, but in a dry climate, this process is accelerated, primarily because of the transfer of hydration, water from your hair into the air. And problem number four is damage. If you have a sustained lack of moisture, hydration from water, humectants that help hold on to water, and those emollients, over time, your hair can become more and more damaged. Brittle, poor texture, more dried out than just being not wet, starts breaking. The cuticle I was talking about becomes more and more open instead of smooth. And so this hair becomes less and less healthy over time. If you already have high porosity hair, it just makes it so much worse. This damage can be somewhat soothed, if not reversed a little bit through treatment products, which we will talk about, but it cannot be fully reversed, and the only way to really get on top of it is with a haircut or a trim, and we'll talk about that. So those are the four major problems with a dry climate. And I do have some more bad news, which doesn't specifically relate to a dry climate, but it's just something all of us need to keep in mind about our hair so we can have the right expectations. First is, some amount of frizz is normal. This is called functional frizz. It's natural. We all have to live with it. Some amount of frizz is okay. It is just part of having curly hair. Two, in order to protect your hair from getting fuzzy or frizzy in a dry climate, you may lose some volume. Now, if you get it right, you're not going to lose a ton. I have great volume most days, as much as I could possibly have. And I still have defined curls. So that's the goal for you, is to find that sweet spot. Okay, so your hair's not going to be huge. Maybe you don't want it to be huge, but a little bit of loss of volume comes with the territory. And third, your hair is not going to be the same every day. We can't dial it in that tight. These last three things that I called bad news are not deal breakers for me. They are just part of finding that perfect balance of where you're happy with your hair. Yes, you have the downsides, but you're also encouraging the good things, and you find that sweet spot where you're happy with the amount of frizz, you're happy with the volume, you're happy with the curl definition. That's my goal for you, and I really hope that the tips in this video are going to help you achieve that, especially if you live in a dry climate. So let's talk about how to care for curly hair in a dry climate. To date, when I'm recording this video, I have 18 tips. Now, I do have a post lining them all out. You can find a link with this video. If there are changes in the future, I will put them in that post. Also, that post is going to have a little bit more detail than I'm going to share in this video, just because I'm trying to keep the video not so long. So make sure to visit that link, because you might find some extra special tips or insights that will make all the difference for you. And feel free to share it with others who might benefit. Tip number 1 is to use the right products for your hair. You might think I'm beating a dead horse here. I've said it so many times, but the right products for your hair type, your issues, is the foundation for everything else working good. The rest of the tips are not likely to work or work very well for you if you're not using the right products for your hair type. Visit the link that's with this video to go more into that if you haven't yet explored what your hair type and your issues are. And if you need any help finding non-toxic products that will help, just reach out to me anytime. My hair is fine. That refers to the strand thickness. It's also low to medium density, which means I don't have a ton of hairs. And third, it's high porosity. So I have a real balancing act with not being able to overdo heavy products or too many products, or else my hair just gets weighted down and flat. But yet the high porosity means I do need some help with moisturizing in both categories we were talking about earlier. So it's a real balancing act. And you probably have a similar balancing act. So it's all part of the journey to explore that and try to find the right combination of products that helps you hit all your issues as best you can. And that is the foundation on which you're going to take the rest of the tips and help your hair even more in a dry climate. Tip number 2, the right stylers. Yes, we do have to talk about styling products. They are key. Many of us wish we could only use one styling product. Even others say, my hair is my hair. If I have to use a styling product, that's not my natural hair. I'm not using any styling products. Well, to each his own, you do you. My personal belief is that we do need styling products in order to help our hair reach its curl potential, and that curls in particular do need at least one styling product. Now, this is very important in a dry climate for protection against the hydration loss, the water transfer from the hair to the air, but there are more benefits of styling products, and let's just talk about them really quick. Styling products provide moisture through water, humectants that attract or hold on to water, and through emollients. Styling products have curl activating ingredients that can help your curls be curlier and your waves be wavier, not more than their potential, but up to their potential. Styling products give you hold so that you can hang on to that definition, that curl, that wave without it falling out. Styling products can provide structure and strength. So this would be in the form of protein or other ingredients that just kind of fill in the gaps and give any weakness in your hair a little bit of a boost so that your curls can be as curly and your waves can be as wavy and your strands be as strong as they need to be to hold your hairstyle and to look great and feel great. And finally, protection. Very, very important in a dry climate. Your styling products can help protect your hair from that essential moisture loss that we are trying to prevent or at least delay. If you want your hair to look and feel great, you need to use styling products. At least one, if not more, depending on your issues. For me, living in a dry climate, I'm also aging, so I have more dryness than I did when I was younger. Just the level of hydration that's in my hair and my skin. I also have these gray hairs coming in that are a different texture and they are drier. So at this point in my life, I do need to use multiple styling products, whereas even a couple years ago, I only used one, which was gel. What I currently use, and this is post shampoo and conditioner, is a curl activator / curl cream and a gel. Those are my absolute minimums. Sometimes, depending on the conditions, I might do a leave-in conditioner as well. And sometimes I experiment with mousses. And then there are also finishing products, which I do use as well. And we will talk about those. The products I choose because of my hair type cannot be heavy. All of mine are lightweight, yet they do deliver the moisture that I need. So I'm finding a good balance that I can still have volume, can have definition, I can have protection, I can have strength without really sacrificing on too much frizz or too little volume. So you got to find that sweet spot. And again, if you need any help finding products, just contact me and I'd be happy to assist. I do want to talk about gel specifically. I think gel is probably the most popular product throughout the ages for giving hold and definition to curls. It's also usually the last styling product if you use several, other than maybe a sealer or a finisher. It's usually the last thing you apply. And it's very important because it's one of your last chances to seal all that hydration in your hair. So ideally you want to choose a strong hold gel, maybe a medium hold depending on your preference of how you like your curls to end up, but it should have sealing ingredients. Now, we were talking about sealing ingredients earlier in the form of emollients. There are non-emollients that can seal your hair as well. And in gels, they don't tend to be too heavy. We want gels that have sealing ingredients that can hold all that hydration in. And the best sealers, at least today, according to my research, are polyquats or VP/VA copolymers. There are others as well. But if your gel contains these sealing ingredients, it's very, very powerful to prevent and or delay the hydration loss from your hair into the air. And it works in humidity too because it prevents a transfer of water from the air into your hair. These would be called humidity gels. And you can use them in a dry climate as well. It's just it prevents the transfer the other way. Back to stylers in general. If you're not getting the results you want and you've been clinging to this desire to use one styler or no stylers, I would highly encourage you to branch out a little. You can do it just a little bit at a time, just experiment with a different styler or adding a styler that might target a specific issue you have, and you might get better results. The technique of application of styling products is very important, so I've got a few tips coming to address that. So let's move on to tip number 3 now, which is no strand left behind. When the weather is dry, one of the most important things you can do is to ensure that every strand of hair is coated with your styling product or products. Because again, those styling products have all those benefits I mentioned before: hydration, moisture, activation, hold, definition, strength, and protection. And no matter your technique, whether you're raking it through your hair, whether you're brushing it through with a brush to get it everywhere, whether you're smoothing it, whether you're sectioning your hair, you want to take your time to ensure that you get your products evenly distributed throughout all your hair so there's no spots where your hair doesn't have any product. And additionally, you might have areas where your hair tends not to turn out so well. I sure do. So I have this top section right here where I have a lot of gray hairs, plus this area is exposed to the air, so it tends to dry out, meaning lose the hydration fastest. And that goes for the back too, so it's kind of like this right here. And I also have my left side that tends to be wavy. It is curly too, but it tends to be not quite as strong as the right side. I do sleep on this side, so I wonder if that has something to do with it. So it really struggles with curl definition and drying out faster. So this is my area, and then the top going down the back are my hard areas. So what I do is first I apply my styling products throughout all my hair, but then I take a little amount and I go back over my problem areas just to ensure they have a little bit more and or to ensure they didn't get missed. I've noticed better curl formation, definition, hold, etc. just by giving that extra special attention to making sure I get the products throughout my hair and then extra special attention on my problem areas. Tip number 4, order matters. So when you're applying your styling products, there is a generally recognized order or best order for your styling products. If you imagine one of those beautiful layer desserts that you see on cooking shows where there's a different color and flavor of pudding being poured into the decorative bowl one at a time. And so you have these beautiful layers, or think of sedimentary rock. Well, the same thing is happening on your hair strand. You are putting products in, filling up the gaps. So that would be the first product. Then the next one goes over top and fills in the gaps on top of that, and so on. Now, sure, there is some mixing of products, I'm sure, just thinking logically through it, but the idea is that you are building up layers of products on your hair, and there is a better order than others to do that. Not that you can't depart, absolutely. There's no rules here, but I just want to share the best order that gives you the best protection from dry climate. So here is the order: leave-in conditioner, heat protectant, curl cream and or curl activator, serum, gel, mousse/foam, and finally a finisher or a sealer if you're using one. Just because I listed those all doesn't mean you have to use them all. In fact, on any given day, I use half or less of those items, but that is the order. So whatever you're using, you would, for the first time at least, try it in that order. And then if you want to depart and experiment with a different order, go ahead. People do it all the time and get great great results. A couple things to say. First of all, a leave-in conditioner and a curl cream are very similar. They both have those moisturizing ingredients, humectants, emollients that can deliver essential moisture to the hair and help protect it from drying out so quickly. So people that say my hair is dry, the drier people often benefit from this. If your hair is high porosity, you often benefit from this. However, they both provide that function, so why do you need both? Not everybody does. And in fact, if you have curly hair, you'd probably get the advice, use the curl cream, because in addition to it being a leave-in conditioner with the moisturizing benefits, it has curl activating ingredients. So if you're only going to use one, use the curl cream. Having said that, a lot of people do benefit from using both. It just really depends on your issues and which products you're using. There have been many days, even recently, that I have used both and I've benefited from it. So if you only want to use one, go for the curl cream. But in the future, you might want to test using both to see if you benefit from both. I do not use a heat protectant unless it happens to be in a multi-purpose product that I'm testing. I'm not really going after the heat protectant benefit. I don't use serum. Most of the time I don't use leave-in conditioner. I just use the curl cream. Most of the time I don't use mousse. I do have one mousse that I am liking. For me, most mousses and foams leave me kind of dried out and stringy. Not really sure why. But today, for instance, I used a more silky smooth mousse foam that was more like a gel, and it worked great. There are categories of products, and you might find one company it's great and another company it's not. And for various reasons. It could just be your hair type. It's too heavy or it's too light. You don't have to use all the products. So what I use on a regular basis is a curl cream and a gel and a finisher. Sometimes a finisher. And then the others, it just depends. Additionally, it is better, in my opinion, to layer them on, meaning apply them one at a time, but you can cocktail them together, which means mix them in your hands together. And that's totally fine, and I've done it. I do think you tend to get better results if you do them separately. You also get better application if you do them separately, but definitely play with cocktailing if you want to save some time. Also remember not to overdo any product. And the more styling products you use, the less you want to use of each, especially if you have fine hair, lower medium density hair, and or low porosity hair, because in all of those, overdoing product can be a real risk. And if you have that kind of hair and or you've overdone product, you know what I mean. So I do have fine hair and I have low medium density hair, so overdoing is so easy for me. So I use a pea to a dime size amount of each product. I would rather err on the side of less product so I don't lose volume and or my hair is not weighed down and greasy looking or stringy looking from too much product. I have another video talking about the differences between curl cream and gel, helping you decide which you need, whether you need both, and how much to use, so be sure to check out that link. Number 5, your technique matters. Heard of these? Squish to condish, brush styling, finger coiling, raking through, smooth, glaze, praying hands, rake and shake. And there's so many more. These are all curly hair techniques that can help you define and clump your curls and get your curls to shrink up and form better. They are also application techniques for getting your styling products in your hair. And as you experiment, you will find that some work for you better than others. I do think there are some that are better than others in a dry climate. And they are the ones that help you smooth the cuticle down, because those cuticles want to flare up and we want them to be smooth. They are also the ones that help us define curl clumps instead of stringy masses of hairs going in all directions. So let me talk to you about the techniques that work best for me to help with smoothing and forming curl clumps. And then you can take that and you can try them. You can also try others to help your hair look and feel its best. So what I do is a little bit different depending on each product. When I'm doing a leave-in conditioner and or a curl cream, I rake them through. I don't have a ton of hair, so sectioning to me, sometimes it just isn't worth the effort because I can get the products distributed through fine without sectioning. So I rake the product through, and then I often use a brush, not only to smooth the cuticles down, but to make sure that I'm getting the product everywhere. Then when it comes time to apply gel, I rake it through to make sure it's everywhere. I might even use a brush. And then I do praying hands, which is where I smooth down the cuticles with the gel on. And that does two things. Smooths down the cuticle like I just said, but it also starts encouraging ribbon curl clumps to form. And if I do it with a little bit of tension, they want to spring back. And finally, I love the squish to condish application technique, which can be used not just on conditioner to force that product deeper into your hair, but you can do it with leave-in conditioner, curl cream, gel to force it deeper into the layers of your hair. It also is great to finish the application because, for instance, if you have curl clumps forming in ribbons, and then you squish up like you're scrunching and pulse, that's the squish to condition motion, then you can start encouraging the shrinkage and the formation of curls. So those are my favorite techniques. And you should experiment to see which techniques work best for you. When you experiment, make sure to test just one thing at a time, including any product changes, so then you know if it really worked or not, if it made a difference or not. And I do all of these techniques, all of the application in a humid environment, which we're going to talk about next in tip number 6, which is to apply your styling products in a humid environment. Remember what we're trying to fight: water content from your hair going into the air. When you don't have any styling products on your hair yet, your hair is the most susceptible because it's not protected. It's the most susceptible to that water transfer. So if you're in a dry room, that transfer is happening already even before you start applying styling products as protection. So if you're in a humid environment, there is no need for the water to leave your hair. It'll stay in your hair while you're applying your styling products and getting your curl clumps to form. Very, very important. So your humid environment is either your steamy bathroom, it's your steamy shower. My bathroom doesn't really get too steamy because it's too big. So for me, it's the shower. I apply my styling products in the shower, and I have tested doing it out and in, and my hair is just way better if I do it when I'm in the shower. So that's something that you can test. You can also test leaving the fan off when you shower so your bathroom is even steamier. You can come out and you can do your styling products. And related to this is tip number 7, which is to apply your styling products on wet hair. Now, what is wet hair? Some people say sopping wet hair. Some people say very wet hair. I say sopping wet hair, but that's because it works the best for me. But you just want to make sure you have enough water in your hair so your styling products go in slippery and smooth, and your curl clumps form well. And so let's talk about that now. I know that people apply styling products to damp hair. If I do that, there's not enough water in my hair to prevent what's called damp frizz or wet frizz. What you really want when you are putting your styling products in and getting your curl clumps to form is ribbons of curl clumps, not stringy masses that are called wet frizz. And usually the main cause of wet frizz is not enough water in your hair when you're applying your styling products. It's the humidity issue. If your hair is drying out, meaning water is leaving, then it's leaving you stringy and frizzy even when you'd say my hair is still wet. So humid environment means shower or steamy bathroom. It also means sopping wet hair or wet enough hair that there's enough water that your hair is not developing wet frizz. How do you know if there's enough water in your hair? Well, there's 3 ways that I know. First, my hair feels slippery and wet, with or without products being added. I know you can feel it too when your hair is already beginning to dry, meaning get less water even though it's still wet. You don't want that feeling. You want your hair to feel wet, slippery and wet. Second, when you're scrunching to create your curl clumps and you scrunch up and then you pulse and then release, and your curl clumps are ribbons of wet curls, none of that wet frizz. And third, when you are scrunching and pulsing, you hear a wet, squishy sound. You are hearing the water just moving around in your palm. The water that's in your hair, you want to hear it squish, squish, squish. Those 3 things tell me that I definitely have enough water in my hair. If you're doing this and you're feeling like, oh, my hair doesn't feel slippery and wet, it actually feels like it's drying, or you're getting wet frizz, then here are some possible fixes so you don't have to scrap the whole thing and you don't have a bad hair day, hopefully. First, simply add more water to your hair. That often fixes it because the problem is there's not enough water there for styling. Second, you could apply more product, but don't do that till you add more water first. And what you're looking for is that it fixes that bad feeling. And third, if the previous 2 things haven't fixed it, it's possible you have a product combination that's too drying on your hair. That does happen when you mix products or you add a product to your hair and you start getting that drying feeling. It's possible it's not a good chemistry match. So rinse your hair, possibly recondition your hair, and start over with different products or different combination of products. A lot of this is trial and error. Sometimes it's not recoverable, but often it is if you're at this point where you're still applying your styling products. You don't want to have that dry feeling when your hair is still wet because that is just foreboding that your hair is not going to get any better. Tip number 8, apply more product after microplopping. Microplopping is where your hair is sopping wet, you've applied your styling products, and you're going to use a damp portion of your t-shirt towel or your smooth 100% cotton t-shirt, and you're going to scrunch up and squeeze so that the excess water that's in your hair can go into the towel. We're not trying to dry the hair. We're trying to remove that extra water that's going to make your drying time even longer. It really helps shave off significant chunks of time from your drying time. But the downside is, in addition to removing some of that water, you've also removed some of the product. And remember, no strand left behind. We don't want areas of your hair that are not protected by styling products. Usually you have an excess of styling products in your hair, so removing them is not fatal, but just on the chance that you've removed too much protection, that's why then I add some more product, and it's my end product. So it's the Stronghold Gel or the final product that has some sealing ingredients. I just put a little bit between my palms and I use gentle praying hands over, smoothing the cuticles down and recovering the curl clumps that may have gotten stripped a little bit too much. And they also do a little bit more scrunching and pulsing, but not too much, because now my hair has less water. It's not dry yet, but it does have less water, and I don't want to introduce wet frizz. I do think it's an essential step so that you ensure your hair has that protection. It hasn't lost any of the styling product protection when you microplop. And now you're ready to dry your hair, meaning make it not wet. So that's tip number 9, diffusing for a dry climate. Now you can't air dry your hair. That is totally fine. However, there is an argument to be made that you will get better results if you diffuse. Diffusing will set your products and help them seal your hair better instead of waiting for hours when all kinds of things are going to be evaporating, even the ingredients in your products. You just can't control the drying when you air dry as much. Also, when you diffuse, you are able to help shrink up your curls and define them potentially more, just because that heat and the technique is just going to encourage more curl, more definition. So that's why I prefer to diffuse. I get way better results that I can control. Well, we always have things that we can't quite control, but I do get a better result. I think there are better ways to diffuse than others. I did recently release my updated diffusing routine. It is for volume, and it actually is a specifically upright diffusing routine for neck issues, which I do have. Now, I have improved a little bit in my neck issues, so I have a little bit more flexibility because I'm close to healed. But it's still a great routine to protect and prevent injuring your neck or your back from diffusing in the future. And in my routine, there's one thing you do that makes a big difference in a dry climate, and it's hover diffusing. And you hover diffuse at the beginning of the routine before you've dried any of it. And you take your diffuser and you're hover diffusing. It's kind of like putting your head under one of those drying caps that are at the salons. And this does two things. First of all, it starts drying out the products and seals them, creating a cast on your curls, which prevents hydration loss. The second thing it does is your roots tend to take longer to dry. So if you're working on the ends first, then you're going to introduce a lot of frizz in your ends because they're going to get over dried while you're trying to dry your roots to catch up. So if you do it the opposite way, you work on your roots first, all your hair ends up being fully dry or nearly dry about the same time, therefore less frizz. When you're hover diffusing, make sure to tip your head in various directions safely so that your roots aren't laying in the same position all the time. So hover diffuse on one side and then the other, and then lean forward. And by the way, when you lean forward, bend at the hip, don't tip your head at the neck. It's much safer. I diffuse only until my hair is about 80% dry. This is what works for me. I feel like if I go farther than that, then I'm introducing frizz. But a lot of people get great results going to 100% dry, so just figure out what works best for you. Please do watch my diffusing video to see the whole routine, because I show how to do it for your neck that's safe, how to get volume at the roots even when you're upright, etc. One other thing you might try, which I'm beginning to do myself, which is not in that updated diffusing routine because it's something new I've done, is called the Smasters technique. And this is named after a lady with the username S Masters who came up with it on a Curly Girl forum. The post is no longer available, so I can't even link to it, but I'll tell you what it is from my understanding. It's where you add more of your mousse or your gel, kind of your final styling product or your desired styling product, at 50% of the way through your diffusing routine. Or me, I tend to do it a little bit later, like maybe 70%. But anyway, it's at least halfway through your diffusing routine, and it really helps you target areas where maybe you're beginning to frizz, or maybe you've come to a spot that's soft and not getting defined, and you're like, oh, I guess guess I missed putting product there because everything else is casted, but that's not. Don't overdo it. You can even dilute with a tiny bit of water, so it would be gel or mousse that work best for this, in my opinion. And so you would smooth over very gently and then continue with your diffusing routine, and therefore you can spot treat those areas, or you can do it over your entire head to just give that additional hold. Play with it. And if you need a recommendation on a diffuser, I have a video on what I recommend and what you should look for, so look for the link with this video. Number 10, leave the cast in. I know we all are like, I don't want that crunchy cast that makes my hair look wet and stiff. We're not talking about that necessarily, but that cast really does have a benefit. It's the protection against losing hydration. And the longer you can leave it in, the longer your hairstyle is going to last. And we're talking multiple days, potentially. And you can scrunch it out, which I will discuss next. But the point is, the longer you can leave the cast in, the longer your definition and your hold are going to last. Typically on my wash day or on a day when I do a full wet refresh, I am leaving the cast in hours, if not the whole day. It will soften just as you move and live your life. So if you're not going anywhere, or if I'm not getting on a video or video call or doing something where I want my hair to look soft and bouncy, I just leave the cast in because it's going to fall out on its own, and that's just that much longer that my hairstyle is going to stay defined. Having said all that about the cast, I don't tend to get a super strong cast. I just don't get that much of a strong cast. Now you may get a strong cast, but whatever amount of cast you get, if you can leave it in longer, that is just how much longer you'll retain curl definition and shine and less frizz. Tip number 11 is seal it. This is the step that you would do when you are getting rid of your cast, when your hair is fully dry, meaning not wet, to give it a little bit more protection from losing that essential hydration, preventing it from going from your hair to the air. Now, typically people are using hair oil, emollients, smoothing over their hair to just give that last chance barrier from water transfer. If you have fine hair, if you have low or medium density hair, if you have low porosity hair, hair oil might not be the best option for you. I don't feel it's the best option for me because even the slightest bit of oil is just too heavy and I end up worse off. So I try to use sealing products that are not actually emollient based. And I have a favorite one that's very light. It is a cream. It looks like a cream, but it's actually water-based. And it softens the crunch, and it also seals and protects my hair from more frizz. So I rub it between my palms, and scrunching out the crunch is the best time to seal your hair. There's various ways to do that. There is scrunching because it's called scrunching out the crunch. So you can scrunch, and I've shown a video where you do this, and do it all over, and you can break up your curl clumps and fluff up your roots. There are other ways to do it though. You can pat or clap. You can also smooth. So do different techniques. There are some you will find that introduce more frizz than others for you. And for me, if I scrunch too much, that's when I get the most frizz. So I like to do a combination of smoothing and kind of a soft clap, I guess. And it just transfers a little bit of what's on my palm and seals the hair shaft against frizz. So sealing is very important. Ideally, you've got sealing ingredients like we were talking about earlier in your gel. And then this just gives you a little bit more sealing protection now that your hair is fully dry, meaning not wet, to that hydration loss. So again, depending on your hair type and your issues, you can use a hair oil for this, or you can choose a finishing product or a sealant that's not oil-based that will provide the same benefits. Contact me if you'd like product recommendations. Tip number 12, smooth throughout the day. This is my sealer, but it also has frizz reducing and it also has a little bit of hold, and it's very lightweight. I can use this repeatedly over and over for multiple days before I get to the point where like, I've got too much product on my hair, time for a wash day, but it would be time for a wash day anyway. So this really does not contribute to buildup. And I use it throughout the day on areas of my hair that tend to get more frizzy. I rub it between my palms and I use my fingers like claws, and I will smooth it over frizzy areas. So a little bit from my fingers is transferring, and as I'm using my claws, I'm kind of tucking in the frizz. And then I can also go over areas that tend to get frizzy and smooth them down. So I'm showing you my areas right now. But I'm not looking at myself, so I don't really know how it's turning out. And then in the back here, you can also just gently, I do this, just go over the curls, and I'm just doing it gently. So it's smoothing down cuticles on top, but it's not getting into the curl formation, and it's not encouraging stretch. And then I fluff. So this is how I refresh my hair throughout the day. If I feel like I'm getting that functional frizz and I just want to keep it at bay, a little bit's okay with me, but not to let it get too far ahead of me. And if I have a problem curl, like it's getting frizzy, I would isolate it and I would have a little bit of product in my hand and maybe just a small amount of water, and I smooth it over the curl and just kind of twirl it down to help reform it and smooth down the frizz. So this is very effective for me to just keep my hair consistently protected, consistently smoothed down. Tip number 13, protect your hair. So we all have certain activities where our hair is more likely to develop frizz and go out of style, lose definition, etc. So if you're working out, if you're getting sweaty on house cleaning or gardening, if you're sleeping, if you're napping, protect your hair against that. The very minimum when you're sleeping is a silk pillowcase, and I have a great recommendation for you with this video, but even that is only a minimum because you're still rubbing, and so you're going to lose hydration and you're going to introduce a minimum amount of frizz from that rubbing. So additional protection is even more important. I have a video on how to protect your hair when you're asleep. You can do this when you're working out, working in the garden, basically anytime you're adding extra factors into your hair. I do have one little update to that though that I wanted to go into here because it's a new development. The tips that I've been sharing here have been working so well for me that I'm not struggling quite as much with my curls getting stretched out when I sleep. And what I had said in that video was that my curls are just loose in the bonnet. Whereas most ladies put their hair in a silk scrunchie, pineapple on top of their head, and then a silk bonnet on top of that. My reasoning against doing that was because my curls get too stretched out from going up like that in the scrunchie. But the tips that I'm sharing in this video that I've really refined are really working for me, and my curls have better longevity and they're not really stretching out like they used to. So I do now use a silk scrunchie under my bonnet. If I have a good wash day and I protect my hair when I sleep, I can get really good hair on day 2, where my curls are still defined and bouncy and shiny, where I have to do very little refreshing. Now, if I didn't have such fine hair, low density hair, and kind of soft curls, I think I could go multiple days with this technique. It's just that my hair won't do that. So you might have stronger curls and you're going to get a lot more mileage out of these tips. And if so, yay for you. I definitely want to hear about it. So let's talk about refreshing next, which is tip number 14, the right refresh or the best refresh. Now, is there a best refresh? Well, there is a best refresh for you depending on what day it is and what period of time it is in your wash day cycle. I can't tell you what that is, but I can give you some tips, and then hopefully you can take that and explore with it to find the best refresh for you that works in a dry climate. I do think that the dry climate has a profound impact on refreshes, at least for me. And there are different kind of refreshes, as you know, and specifically we're talking about if your hair needs a pick-me-up or you've slept all night and you just want to refresh and not wash your hair again or whatever. You just want something quick and easy. So there are dry refreshes where people are using product, no water, to refresh their curls. Then you have varying degrees of how much water is used and or with product to refresh hair. And then you have full wet refreshes where you're pretty much saturating your hair again and or using product to refresh it. So there's a whole scope of different refreshes. Maybe because my hair is fine, maybe because my curls are soft. I definitely think it has a lot to do with climate. Anything in the middle there, from any amount of water short of full wet refresh, any amount of water for me is a tease that makes my hair's cuticles go, give me more, give me more, give me more. I get more frizzy hair if I do any kind of damp refresh. So for me, I either have to do a dry refresh or a full wet refresh, because that middle ground there just gives me more frizz. If that's true for you, then maybe these tips will help. If it's not true for you, awesome. So what I do is either a dry refresh or a full wet refresh. With the dry refresh, I'm really looking at what does my hair need? Does it need more hold? Does it need more moisturizing? And I will choose my product accordingly. Now I may dilute with a tiny spray of water just to help it spread out better, but essentially it's a dry refresh that I'm smoothing over my hair in the morning, underneath and on top, and or smoothing over individual curls to help them reform, and or smoothing on problem areas where there's frizz. This works great for me on day 2 hair. If I've had a good wash day and I've protected my hair when I sleep, then a dry refresh, I just have really great hair on the second day. I do normally shower on these days too, so I protect my hair in a shower cap when I'm in the shower so it doesn't even get any steam on it. And then when I'm done showering, I pull off the shower cap, pull out my scrunchie, fluff my hair, let it settle for 5 minutes, decide what it needs, and then I proceed with the dry refresh. On days when my hair just doesn't come out of the bonnet looking that great, it is a full wet refresh for me. And sometimes my full refreshes are better than wash days. I get in the shower, I wet my hair down, I often detangle and apply conditioner because I need some moisture added, and I'm talking about the emollient moisture in addition to the water hydration. Rinse that out, and then I reapply styling products. I don't apply quite as much as I did on wash day because even though I've rinsed my hair and some of it has left, there is still product on my hair, so I don't want to get too gunky. And then I just proceed with all the techniques that I just told you about for applying styling products, diffusing, etc. My current refresh routine is, and this varies depending on how good my results are, day 1 is a wash day, day 2 is a dry refresh, day 3 is a full wet refresh, and I do a conditioner co-wash, which I'll talk about. Day 4 sometimes is a dry refresh, but usually I'm ready for a wash day. My hair's limitations plus my dry climate, I am not able to go 4, 5, 6, 7 days. I'm typically going for that soft, fluffy look, and I finger detangle and I just let my curls and waves just be loose and full because definition is beyond me at that point, no matter what I do, unless I wash my hair again. I think the biggest issues for me is my fine strands, so I just can't use any more product until I wash again. And second, the dry climate. I have lost so much hydration from my hair that the only thing that's going to get it back to fresh is a just complete redo with the water and the shampoo to reset and give me a clean slate. You should definitely experiment with different ways to refresh to find out what works for you, because just because it's a little bit harder for me doesn't mean that it's going to be hard for you. It could be super easy. I see great results all the time, but I do think a dry climate makes it trickier, and it's especially that issue of how much water do you use. Because not enough, you could end up in a worse situation in terms of how your hair looks and feels and whether or not you feel like you have good hair or not. I do want to mention something about full wet refreshes. They have a really bad rap. There are all kinds of curly girls and curly methods that say, don't wet your hair down so often because you'll get high girl fatigue. Hygral. Now, I'm not arguing that it's not true. Absolutely not. I have looked into it and I feel like there's very little research about it and there's very little to actually prove that it exists. Not that it doesn't, we just might not have the proof yet. But the argument is that you are weakening the bonds of your hair by too frequently swelling and shrinking your hair from water, and that doing this too frequently causes permanent damage. That may be true. So I think we all have to find a sweet spot where we're not doing too much to our hair, because logically that makes sense. But the argument is that full wet refreshes every day or every other day are too much for everybody. And I don't necessarily think that's true. First of all, I don't think the research shows it yet, so it might be there. But second, I think there's more factors involved. And when I think about my hair specifically and a dry climate specifically, I think the factors that I'm dealing with outweigh the arguments people are making, specifically for these two reasons. One, my fine hair, these strands are so thin, I almost can't see them except that the light is reflecting on it. How much water do you think is in my fine strands of hair? Like the healthy amount of water. How much water do you think is in here compared to somebody with medium thickness or coarse? Well, I have less. I'm going to lose that water faster than somebody with thicker hair strands. Second, in a dry climate where even all these tips cannot stop the process of losing hydration from our hair into the air, I'm going to lose it faster just because of living in a dry climate. And what is the only way to restore that hydration? It is to saturate the hair. So that's why I've landed on, I'm going to get my hair wet every other day because I actually feel like my hair needs it. It needs to be saturated with water and the strands filled up again with the hydration it needs. And my hair is not damaged, my hair is healthy. So for me, it's not excessive. Now, it might be different for somebody else. And we all know we all have different wash day cycles and hydration cycles, etc. So make sure you're finding the sweet spot for you and don't listen to rules that may not apply to you. So bottom line, you do you, and your hair will tell you if it's not being treated properly. My hair tells me it is being treated properly because it's healthy, curl definition, volume, it feels good, it looks good, and I'm very happy with it. So that is my cycle, and that's why I do full wet refreshes more often than other people. Tip number 15, special treatments. Does your hair need special treatments? I think that most of us do, and I think if we live in a dry climate, we especially need to do extra treatments. Some of these are weekly, some of these are monthly, some of these are a couple times a year. You got to figure that out for yourself, but let's talk about them. One is, I've talked about this so many times and I have a video for you on it. It is clarifying, where you deeply cleanse your hair to remove buildup and or hard water deposits, mineral deposits. If this buildup in the form of products or mineral deposits or oils is on your hair, it prevents ingredients that need to get deeper into your hair from going where they need. You can have more frizz, more unmanageability, and your hair just starts not working so well. You need to clarify. I clarify weekly. Others may clarify monthly. Find that sweet spot for you and you can explore that more in my separate video. Deep condition. Does your hair need extra moisture from time to time in the form of humectants and emollients? But particularly when you're talking about conditioners, you're really focusing on emollients, even though they have humectants. This is more than your regular conditioner. Do you need more? And personally, I do need to deep condition. I think it's because my hair is high porosity and I live in a high climate. So I deep condition at least once a week, if not more. And I use a deep conditioner that can be used in place of regular conditioner in the shower. I leave it on for a little bit longer, 5 to 10 minutes, and I do something else in the shower so I don't waste the time or waste the water. So like shaving. And it's very, very effective and my hair is great on those days. And I do try to pair my deep conditioning days with my clarifying days. Protein. If you have high porosity hair or fine hair or damaged hair, you likely would benefit from additional protein. There are separate protein treatments and I'll have a link for you with this video, but you can also make sure that your products you're using, some or all of them, contain protein, so you're just getting good protein whenever you use products. Shampoo, conditioner, deep conditioners, gels, and curl creams, they all may have protein. Don't overdo the protein. Your hair will feel brittle and not so good. But if you can find the right balance, at least have it in some of your products. If you need it, then your hair is going to feel stronger. Also, your curls and your waves will be curlier or wavier up to their potential. Bonding treatments. So there's protein treatments that are kind of on top of the hair shaft, whereas bonding treatments go deeper. Hair is not one-dimensional. It's like a tube, and you have outer, middle, and core layers. And you might need reparative, restorative ingredients to strengthen and repair issues at multiple levels of your hair. So bonding treatments are really important to do as well if your hair is weak, or just try one to see, is your hair better? That's a good sign that, oh, I got some benefit from that, so apparently I did need some bonding. I favor bonding treatments that can be done in the shower, just like a deep conditioner. You put it on about the same way and let it sit for a few minutes, up to 10 minutes, while you're doing other things like shaving. Often with bonding treatments, they say don't use a conditioner on day you do the bonding treatment, but I actually find that I get better results if I do a deep conditioner or a regular conditioner. I think it's because of the dry climate. So I do my bonding treatment, then I do my conditioner, and then everything else is what I've described. And I have to throw this in there, a haircut. You might need the special treatment of a haircut, because even with the clarifying, the deep conditioning, the protein, the bonding treatment, your hair is still damaged, because none of these can completely reverse damage. And the only thing that will completely get rid of it is a haircut. You can do it by trimming your hair regularly so that eventually you have all healthy hair, Lord willing. Follow these tips and others I've shared, clean up your diet, etc. So eventually, depending on your hair length, in 1 or 2 years, you won't have damaged hair anymore. Or if your hair is long enough and or you're brave enough, you could just cut it all off, depending on how drastic that is for you. And then you could have a clean slate tomorrow. Tip number 16, co-wash more and shampoo less. Co-washing is where you wash with conditioner only. Your conditioner detangles, you're massaging it into your scalp where it's gently cleaning debris and making your scalp smell good and removing flakes and stuff. And you can also massage it into your hair and it will do some cleaning of your hair. Definitely not as deep as a shampoo, but it can wash. It's gentle, but it's called a co-wash, conditioning wash. You leave it on as you would a conditioner. You just haven't shampooed. You rinse out and you proceed with styling as usual. If you have fine hair, low density hair, or low porosity hair, co-washing is not usually recommended just because it tends toward buildup and heaviness and loss of volume and or greasiness. And even though I have fine hair, I think because I live in a dry climate, it really works great for me to shampoo my hair only every other time I get it fully wet. I have had great results with shampooing less and co-washing more often. Here's what 1 week looks like for me currently. Day 1 is a wash day. I'll call this the clarifying treatment day. Clarifying shampoo, regular shampoo, and then deep conditioner or a protein or bonding treatment, and everything else proceeds as usual. Day 2 is a dry refresh. Day 3 is a full wet refresh with a co-wash. Day 4 is a dry refresh or a wash day. If it's a wash day, it's just a regular wash day, regular shampoo, regular conditioner, maybe deep conditioner if I think I need it. And then the cycle repeats again. So for me, that's 2 days a week shampooing and 1 to 2 days a week co-washing. So basically every other time I get my hair wet, I co-wash. Tip number 17, smooth clothing and accessories. So our hair, depending on how long it is, can be doing quite a bit of rubbing as we move and live and laugh and love. Rubbing on your clothing can transfer hydration, introduce frizz, and all the other downsides of those things that we've talked about. So make sure you're wearing smooth clothing. It doesn't have to be silky or satiny unless you love that. I don't particularly care for those kind of clothes. So I always buy smooth clothing. So all my tank tops, all my t-shirts, all my sweaters, they are all smooth textured to reduce the friction and the impact of rubbing. In addition, I do try to go for natural fibers. So most of my tops are 100% cotton or a cotton blend, and I do think that really helps as well. Now, thinking about colder weather where you need to wear scarves and hats, so do silky or satiny scarves or scarves that have a silky lining. Same thing with hats. You can get hats where they have silk or satin linings. If your favorite hat doesn't have a lining, you can put a silk scarf around your head and then put the hat on, and that will really help protect your hair. So definitely look at your wardrobe and accessories to make sure you're not introducing frizz and or removing hydration from your hair when you don't have to. And tip number 18, your internal health matters. It's very, very important because you are what you eat. Your skin and your hair are a reflection of your internal health. And I know we all have health battles. I do myself. And it is a struggle. Try to do the best you can. You want to address hormone imbalances. I have a video and or an article that gives you tips on how to balance your hormones naturally. You want to make sure to eat a clean diet. And I do have lots of opinions on that, but we won't go into that here. But there are cleaner diets than others. You want to make sure you're plenty hydrated, because if your body and your cells are dehydrated, what do you think your hair is going to be? So make sure you're drinking enough water. Don't drink too much water. Also, your internal health is affected by the products that you consume and or use. So you want to make sure your household products, your personal care products are non-toxic and non-damaging to your health. Well, that was quite a list of tips. Thank you if you've watched this far, and I pray and hope that you will find these tips as meaningful and helpful as I have. They have made the world of difference in my hair living in a dry climate. They have helped me extend my wash days. They've helped me hang on to curl definition and shine. They've helped me be less frizzy. They've even helped me not overdo on losing volume. And that has to do with the products I've chosen as well as the tips. If you need assistance choosing products that are non-toxic that work for your hair type and issues, please do contact me. I have my email and my phone number listed with this video, so you can text me or you can email me. I also have a quick quiz you could go through, wardy.com/questions, to see if it's even a good fit for you working with me. And then if it is, we can take it from there. There's no pressure. I just love to see if I can help. And if I can, great. If I can't, that's fine too. Again, check out the link that's with this video so that you can bookmark and or print the full post that has all these tips in depth, and share with a friend who lives in a dry climate and might be helped too. God bless you all. Bye-bye.